Okay, hi guys. Apologies for the noise. Right next door, digging the core of a borehole or something. But if you hear any sort of building works in the background, apologies for that. But today we're going to look at deforestation and the destruction of peat bogs, and look at the problems associated with those. So really, we're looking at the human interactions with our environment and the damage that we're doing. These are the success criteria, and what I would suggest you do is effectively get those four as a bullet point and explain each. Make sure you can state how humans reduce the amount of land available for other animals. Give some examples. I'm going to give you four. Explain the destruction of peat bogs and why that's a bad thing. What is a peat bog and why do we need them? Why large-scale deforestation has occurred, so the reasons for that and the consequences of it. Okay, so let's have a quick look through these, and again, just keep these for your notes. Okay, guys. Right. Make the tech work. There we go. Right, lovely. So here we go. Why do we reduce the amount of land available? Well, really, I don't think there's any major surprises there. We've looked at this already. So what do? We use land for building. So we have to clear land for that. So that's a huge amount of deforestation there in Britain, where we've effectively cleared huge amounts of woodland to be able to build on. We use land for quarrying, which is quite damaging to the environment. We use land for farming. So again, we've cleared large amounts of woodland for crops and also for sort of livestock farming. So we've got crop growing and livestock farming there, and also for waste management, so waste dumping, which is what we looked at last time. So those are the reasons why we do it. So what about peat then? Well, peat is really sort of a good carbon sink in our environment. It's what it effectively is. Peat is old sort of plant matter that has been sort of trapped there for a very long period of time. So plants grow in watery land, and what happens is when they die, they sort of they end up in anaerobic conditions. They get trapped where oxygen can't get to them. Oxygen tears things apart. It's a very reactive chemical. So because they're in anaerobic conditions, they do not decay. They become quite acidic and quite anaerobic. So that means that the material doesn't decay. So all of those plants that have grown and trapped lots of carbon dioxide by photosynthesis and producing cellulose and other carbohydrates, they've trapped all that carbon dioxide for thousands of years. And what happens is that then sort of stays as a good carbon sink. So there's a little diagram here showing how it happens. So you've got waterlogged soils, you've got plants growing in there, and what happens is they get trapped. Layers of sort of soil and other material grows on top of that. Very slowly it turns into peat in a quite damp environment. It's quite analogous to things like coal and oil, in that you've got decaying plant or animal matter that's been trapped underground in anaerobic conditions where bacteria cannot then decay them. So it's quite analogous to that. Now, peat bogs are incredibly diverse ecosystems. If you want to know where peat bogs are found locally, there's quite a lot. So the Roaches, there's a huge amount of peat-based moorland behind that. This is the Kinder Plateau down here. So if you go up to Kinder, up in the Peak District, that's a huge peat marsh, peat bog, and it's a really diverse ecosystem. So there's a huge amount of different biodiversity there, loads of microorganisms, plants, animals, and this is an example of some of the plants that grow within the peat bog. And so it's a really important diverse ecosystem, as well as being a massively important carbon sink. But the problem is we are destroying them. We are getting rid of peat bogs. Why are we doing that? Well, one reason is because it makes fantastic compost. So people farm it, they cut it away and use it for compost, and that of course then reduces the habitat, which then reduces biodiversity, and biodiversity we've already talked about. It's really important. But the other reason we do it is for fuel, and we've been cutting peat for fuel for a very long time. It is a good source of carbon, so people cut it, they dry it out, and they use it as a fuel. And that's a real problem, because when you burn it, that releases a huge amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is a real problem. So peat bogs are important ecosystems, and we're reducing them. and we're reducing them for compost and for burning. You may remember an example of this. I dug this off here. This is from the BBC website, but it was quite widely reported. But a couple of years ago, August 2018, there was a massive campfire. Oh, sorry, it was a campfire that caused a massive wildfire all over the Peak District, right back just behind the Roaches. And you can see here, this is the Roaches here, and a huge amount of smoke and fire. And it took weeks to put it out, but it was hugely devastating for wildlife. Caused a huge loss of biodiversity in that area. So that's a real problem. Okay, right. So what about deforestation then? Well, deforestation we've talked about in the past. We've talked about it in chemistry, but now we're in biology, so we're looking at it again. So what is deforestation? It's where we remove forest habitats to make use of the land. Okay, it's chopping down of trees. Now, why do we do it? We do a number of things. We use it for harvesting timber. We use it for replacing vegetation with agricultural crops and livestock, and they all have huge damaging effects. So, what are the damaging effects? Well, one significant problem, particularly in the rainforest, is something called slash and burn. And slash and burn is where you basically cut down the trees and burn them to create that land for farming, particularly beef farming. Actually, it's one of the big problems down there, and that, of course, massively reduces biodiversity. The ability removes the habitat for lots of plants and animals there, which is a real problem. But burning the wood releases carbon dioxide, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So we have a massive reduction in biodiversity. The other thing is not only are we burning the wood which releases carbon dioxide, but we're reducing the planet's ability to reabsorb that carbon dioxide, because you've got significantly fewer trees, so you've got significantly less photosynthesis, and photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide. So that's a real problem. But deforestation effectively is the removal of the forest habitat, and it massively reduces biodiversity. Why do we do it? Well, it's provide land for farming of cattle. It provides land for rice fields, and don't forget, rice fields produce methane, so that's another greenhouse gas that's a problem. And it produces land for growing crops, for biofuels. Now, biofuels we'll come on to in a second. Things like bioethanol, wood, and biogas. We'll come on to those shortly. So, why is this a significant problem? Well, it can cause various species to become endangered, or particularly to become extinct. And as an example of this, in Borneo, there's you can see on the picture there the amount of forest in Borneo being significantly reduced for other things like palm oil, things like farming land, and that, of course, is causing things like the orangutan population to decline. I've got a picture of orangutan there because I think they're ace. And so we are causing significant problems here. Now, this is not just a biological problem, this is a societal problem, because we might want deforestation not to occur, but for developing nations they will need that land because their populations are increasing largely. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. It's very easy to say we should stop cutting trees down. However, it's quite difficult for the people who depend on that land for food. So it's a very global problem and it needs a very global solution. So what about biofuels then? What do we do why do we use biofuels, and what are they? Well, biofuels are renewable fuels produced from agricultural crops, primarily sugarcane. Sugarcane is a really good biofuel because sugar can be converted into ethanol. Ethanol is the alcohol that we drink recreationally, but pure ethanol is a fantastic fuel. And the advantage of this as a fuel is you could argue it's carbon neutral. Now, you could argue it's carbon neutral, you'd be wrong. But the reason why you could argue that is because the sugarcane is grown, and when it reaches maturity, it's cut down, the sugar is turned into a fuel. When the fuel burns, the carbon dioxide released from that process is then reabsorbed by growing more sugarcane. So arguably it's carbon neutral. Now, the reason it isn't is because of transportation costs and the energy costs involved in farming and all the machinery involved there. But biofuel is a really positive change in terms of getting rid of fossil fuels, because you can burn bioethanol in a normal petrol engine without a huge amount of modification. So it's actually a really positive thing. And biodiesel is another example of a biofuel. The downside of this is, unfortunately, we cannot produce enough biofuel to satisfy our energy needs as they are without a significantly bigger planet. We just simply cannot grow enough. But we are cutting down trees to grow biofuels. And for certain countries in the world, for example, Cuba, where there's been an embargo from the United States for a lot of years now, based on the Cuban Missile Crisis and all the rest of it. It is actually very difficult for them to get fossil fuels, so they've been using biofuels significantly. So, why is this a problem? Well, we're not really doing global warming today, but it's never a bad idea to talk about it, because we are cutting down trees, we're burning trees, and we're removing these carbon sinks like peat bogs, and we're burning the peat as a fuel. That releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. If we're growing rice, we're releasing methane into the atmosphere. And these two gases are significant contributors to global warming. And we know about the consequences of that, so weather changes, extreme weather, sort of flooding and droughts, ice caps melting, and then the rising of the sea levels, loss of habitats because of the changing weather and stuff, and also the fact that if sea levels are rising, the land is getting smaller, and that means there's more encroachment on for human beings on these natural environments. But you can see here a graph which shows a significant increase in carbon dioxide, and you can see here over the same sort of time period a significant growth in global temperature. So there's no real controversy anymore about whether increasing carbon dioxide levels are increasing global temperature. There is some controversy about what the extent of human activity is, but I think the overwhelming majority science position now is that human CO2 emissions lead to global warming. Okay, so what are we doing about it? We'll talk about this in more detail another time, but we are trying to put programs in place to combat this, because if we don't deal with it, it's going to be one of the biggest problems faced by humanity. So we're looking at reintroducing field margins. So putting hedges back, basically, that's going to again provide a better biodiversity in those areas. We're looking at protection and regeneration of rare habitats to make them special areas of scientific interest, and that's going to make those areas safe for biodiversity to increase. Looking at breeding programs to try to guard against extinction. I don't know whether any of you during lockdown have watched The Tiger King, but one of the scary statistics that came out of that is there are now more tigers in the United States in captivity than there are tigers in the wild, which is a terrifying thought. And also reduction of deforestation and carbon dioxide emissions, and the Kyoto Protocol and various other agreements, the Paris Accord, to reduce carbon dioxide emissions to try to reduce global warming. Okay, right, that's it, guys. Hopefully you've got some notes. Hopefully you're able to make notes on all of those things. Please do keep them for your records. Next session, all being well, will be a live session using Microsoft Teams. This is very much guinea pig territory, right? I don't know how to use it. This is very much you guys, and we'll have a little bit of a meeting, just sort of get to know the system a little bit and have a little chat about where we are so far in terms of biology. It's not going to be a particularly demanding lesson, so please join me if you can. It'll be next lesson, it'll be normal lesson time. Other than that, guys, take care of yourselves, and I will see you all soon.